When I look in the mirror, I wonder what I see. I feel good.
Okay, so welcome to Free to Speak. This is your girl again, Free. The lady next to me, she knows me as a totally different name. It's Farisha. That's what she knows me as. But you guys have met me and know me as Free. This woman next to me is a really dear friend. Her name is Aisha Jordan. We go back to the 8th grade at Faith Middle School. Remember on a previous show or episode, I talked about living on Fort Benning and going to Faith Middle School. Well, here's one of them, Aisha Jordan. We met each other at school, but it was kind of like at the time, it was like a passing each other by kind of thing. She was the new girl and I had been there, but like I told you guys before, I was totally over school. So I was just there. I know you, I've seen you, but it was just kind of, she's a very personable person. But at the time, we just didn't connect on that level. And then in high school, I went to another high school. I went to Columbus High. She went to Spencer. And so she blossomed at Spencer, and I trudged through the mud at Columbus High until actually coming over to Spencer. And even then, I think me and Aisha was talking about it a few weeks ago. You know, it's all about God's timing, because even then, we still didn't connect. Like if I saw her and she saw me, it was like hey, was it rude? She wasn't rude. Let me tell you. So Aisha was one of those girls. She was like extremely popular. Let me get in that voice. So she was extremely popular, and she was on the Wave. She was a wave-in. She was very fabulous and all of that, you know, just like she's fabulous. And I was one of those kids. I just hated school. I hated being there. I hated the thought of it. So definitely our circles never crossed.
I did not consider myself popular.
She was. She may not.
To do what I needed to do.
Let me tell you, for the rest of us, it was very not a bad thing, popular, but everybody knew Aisha. She was not rude. She was not ugly. She was just very fabulous. And honestly, in my own mind at the time, she had, I looked to her because she was just confident in her skin. And I think that's what I admired. And I have never told her that. But in school, you know, you kind of see things about people that you don't possess. And so I learned, I think about it now, but at the time, I think it was just the fact that she was just comfortable in her skin, and that she was able to kind of relate to whoever she was with. She wasn't the popular kid like you see on Mean Girls, the movie. No, she was just able to always relate to whoever she's with, and still is that way. So, yes. So we just got reconnected, because for those of you who don't know, we are about to turn 40 in a couple of years.
So we look good.
But we look great. We look wonderful. And so what we did last year was kick off our 20-year kickoff reunion. So basically we all came together, and Aisha kind of exhibiting a lot of her skills, which is organizing, which no. So I'm still admiring that she can organize, she can write things down, she has checklists. And I watch the videos on TikTok of people who do it, and I just admire, because I can't, I'm just like a free fall. The only thing you can catch me about on time is the time to wake up in the morning. That's the only thing that's probably scheduled. And that I can't do.
Wake up on time.
It's I can wake up on time. I can go to bed on time. But everything in between, we just going with the wind, however the wind blows. But this beautiful young lady is an organizer, and so she helped put all our kickoff thing along with a group of us, organize our 20-year kickoff. And in that, what happened is, and I know some of you guys get to the point. I'm getting to the point, okay? So in that, what happened is we connected after this 20-year kickoff, because I think at the time, for me, it was kind of she hasn't done anything to me. There's no issue, and you'll speak on your behalf. But for me, it was like, it's always been cool. I love her organizational skills that I watched her do while we were doing the kickoff day. So it was like, let's explore those feelings, and I'm gonna give you opportunity to kind of speak on it.
So first of all, thank you for that warming introduction. Absolutely. All those things you said about me, I don't think I necessarily recognized or saw them in myself until later on in life.
Wow.
Because I think I was still kind of navigating who I was, kind of coming back to Georgia, being the new girl for a while. And even just now with organizing, with preparing for the reunion, that's when it really hit me like, oh, I really do have a skill at organizing and putting things together. And for a minute, I was like, why am I the one doing all of this? And it just dawned on me, girl, God put that in you to be able to do those things. So use it here and just let it be what it is. So thank you for acknowledging that. And it really put me in a place to just accept what I'm good at and what I can do. So it's been really fun, just like you said, with timing. I know now as an adult woman and 20 years has gone by, I would say making new friends isn't always the easiest thing, but when you connect with people who are genuine and you can just feel the authenticity in them, I'm really big. Like I can pick like, nah, that they don't really sit well with me, but it was just something about you, like it just resonated. To your point, we were kind of always in passing, but it was never anything negative. It's kind of like, I like Farisha. Let me call her, see how she doing today. And that's just really what it was. Just a random Tuesday. I'll just call her, how you doing lunch? And I mean, I think we've become more effective in our communication with each other.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate that. Like your father was saying earlier, I'm going to just be truthful and I'm going to just say what it is. And I found myself being able to talk to you very easily without feeling judged or like, I got to pacify this. I'm going to say this in a nice way so that I'm not being offensive or sound crazy. So it just really came very easy for you and I to connect as mature adult women.
So I think that's the thing about God's timing. Like you think in your mind, like if we had connected at a younger age, we would have mishandled. I know I would have mishandled you because it took a lot for me to be able to be the person you can hear and you can come and talk to and tell me things. And I was mature enough to handle, mature enough to give advice, and mature enough to know when to talk and when not to talk, or when to say and when not to say. Even, learning that friendships or relationships doesn't have to be on my terms, that it's a give and take. So like, I'm a hands-off kind of person, like when it comes to relationships. So I don't always do a whole lot of talk, but with Aisha and you guys have had me talk with you guys previously about two other friends of mine. You guys have stretched me to where, let me tell you, Aisha is like she has a schedule. So like she'll say, well, we can reconvene, which I like saying now. We can reconvene next week on Tuesday around lunchtime. Is that good for you? Like, but it's the organization for me. So I know, like in that day when she called me, and it made me irritated because when she called me, somebody else was talking to me, and I was like, this is a scheduled conversation that I'm supposed to be having. So friendships and relationships are supposed to help us grow. So I said all that to say, you guys, welcome my dear friend, my new connection partner, Aisha Jordan. And I want to make sure I say what she is. So she is the CEO and founder of Essence of Culture Consulting, LLC. And this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about her expertise. And let me tell you, I don't have a whole lot of expertise in the matter because when she first talked to me about it, I was talking about something else. And she had to very politely say, no, I'm not really talking about that. I'm talking about this. And so I am just literally going to be educated. It is important. What she talks about is diversity, equity, and inclusion when it comes to the workplace and from the perspective of employees, not what is beneficial for the employers. Now, with that being said, if the employers take heed to what the employees are needing, then in turn, you guys will, as employers, become beneficial because you will have happier employees, right? So, first thing, tell me about Essence of Culture Consulting, Ellen.
So, Essence of Culture Consulting, I am a human resources firm, and what we do is advocate the employee experience. So, I know when you think about human resources, you think, of course, HR is for the company, but human capital is what they call employees or
Right.
workforce. That's really who matters at the end of the day.
Right.
Because if you don't have happy employees and if they're not productive, they're not feeling valued, you're not going to meet your goals, business owner. You're not going to meet your goals. You're not going to get that revenue. So it's important that you adhere or take heed to what your employees are feeling. And so what I do is I try to bridge that gap.
Right.
I work with organizations. We go through organizational assessments to assess the temperature of the company to see where the employees are, what type of programs, whether it's training for the employees, leadership training. There may need to be a revamp of incentives or benefits that are being offered. And so what we do, once I do those assessments, I review those with HR, whoever the decision makers are.
Right.
And I help them come up with a strategy to roll out these changes so that in case that score is a little low, we can get higher scores in a set amount of time so that we can change the climate of the company. And really, it's just about the culture. And I always say the way you show up to work or however you show up,
Right.
that's the culture and environment that you create. If you feeling stank and dark on the inside, that's how you're going to show up to everybody else.
Right.
And it's really important that people kind of take a step back and do a self-assessment.
Absolutely.
That's really the root of everything. But the company, what we do is we do those cultural assessments and we help companies implement a strategic plan. And I do advocate for the employee experience because employees are the ones who kind of feel everything.
Right. Right.
Executives are so disconnected from the day-to-day work and the tasks that really go into creating this product or this service. And a lot of times employees, they don't feel comfortable or confident enough to stand up to a manager without the fear of retaliation or some type of rebuttal that's going to end up in a negative consequence. Right. So I just try to bridge that gap. And in the space that we're in today, I really want people to just kind of understand what they can expect or what they should be doing.
Right.
And just know what's available to them as you're working through your current organization or you're looking to go somewhere else. Like, just look at some of these things and think about what's important to you. Is it in alignment?
Right.
What your career goals are, what your future goals are.
Your work-life balance.
That's work-life balance. That's
She's big on work-life balance, and I am totally in agreement with it. Like, work-life balance is important. We were talking about it too a couple of weeks ago, how the grind of work has changed since the pandemic. Like, prior to it was, people were all about the bag, like literally going to work, got to be there by any means necessary, kind of disregarding, I hate to say disregarding, but for lack of better words, she talks eloquently, I don't. So for the lack of better words, like disregarding your children events. I can remember going to work and my child had something that they wanted me to be there, and I was like, babe, I'm sorry, I can't go. Like, I can't be there. And then after the pandemic, it's like, hey, y'all at work, I'm leaving at 1 because I got to go be at my child's thing. Like, I don't think the companies are understanding that families, because we were in the home with each other, how that now has changed and shaped what we view and how we view at work. And do you guys use that, or use the information from the pandemic era, pandemic time frame? Do you guys, tell the companies, hey guys, y'all might want to shift because folks ain't really thinking, like, they like it for their money and their coins, but at the end of the day, their family is important. And do you guys relate that information to them?
Sure did. Sure did. But to your point, that's why there's so much research and so much data being done. The numbers don't lie.
They don't.
So if you have research and the data is telling you I was reading this article the other day, and it was on, I believe, CNN, like a CNN article. They were talking about Black people are just stressed and overwhelmed and are ready to quit jobs, but it all goes back to before the pandemic. It was work, work, work. There was no, and I can speak to that personally, that happened to me. Work, work, work. But then when the pandemic hit, it really forced you to sit down and be at home by yourself with your husband, with your spouse, kids.
Right.
You guys were forced to be a family.
Right.
You gonna have dinner together because we not going out.
Can't go nowhere.
Whatever issues that we are avoiding, we have to talk about them.
That's right.
We got to talk about them. And I know, homes may have separated during that time, and families were able to reconnect. But also, employers had an opportunity to see where you thought you needed to be in the office every day to get a job done, and you had to quickly shift and be able to perform that same work at home. And so now that we're, I don't want to say out of the pandemic, but we're adapting to what this new norm is, that's something that employers have to think about now. These people just proved for a whole year that they can work from home.
Longer than that for some people.
Yeah,
like almost 3 years for some people.
Yeah, 3 years. But the thing is, they were still meeting their numbers. The bottom line, because that's what
matters.
The bottom line, they were still meeting their goals.
Right.
And so if employees are showing that they can meet those goals, granted, that's not the environment for everybody. Some people need to be in a workspace with others to be more collaborative. And I do understand being in a room with like-minded people collaborating, how that can work. But at the same token, people can be in the same office and don't come talk to each other.
Right.
You gonna send them a Slack message or
Microsoft Teams.
I'm sending some type of message, and that person can be upstairs or at the end of the hallway, and they don't come face to face. So it's those type of things that we have to think about. And companies make huge investments in purchasing technology for us to be collaborative, but are those collaboration tools really working?
Right.
Are they the most effective? We are investing so much in something to make people want to work together closer, but it's not working, and we can still do that from a distance.
Right.
So, yeah.
I think that too, I should have bought Zoom stock before the pandemic, because prior to, I had no idea of what Zoom was, and like you didn't hear about it. But then, once the pandemic, everybody's Zoom, FaceTime and all this other stuff. But either way, I think it's important for companies like you, and especially in your expertise, to be able to relate to people like we were able to, you guys were still able to maintain. And so let's kind of see how we can get the best of both worlds. You don't want it to be super, because everybody is not responsible enough to, handle their business on their own if they're working in a remote or hybrid situation. But also not punishing other people who are able to be successful. I have a sister-in-law that she does hybrid, but she rocks. Like, she just got a stupid bonus because she rocks and has been rocking during the pandemic. And then you got some people that if they can do less, but they also are pretty much like that in the building too. It's just a little bit more micromanaged because you're there. I think that, each employee is different. And so you have to, accommodate them individually. So, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Tell me and them what that is, because I'm going to tell you, when she first talked about it, I started thinking that she was talking about, like, hiring and firing people and making sure that we hire diverse folks. And she's just so polite. It was like, no, it's not necessarily that, but she's going to school us, educate us.
That really is what it is when you think about, and I had to do this myself, because every time I would have this conversation, they were like, but what do you do? Right? What does that mean? So I really had to take a step back, like, okay, diversity, inclusion. How do I break this down so that everyone understands? We all know diversity. It is showing whoever we are. Nobody is the same. Right. It could be whether it's race, gender, that's what we know diversity as. And that is what employers have been implementing to make sure that there were no discriminations going on.
Right.
So you want diverse people. you want people to feel included, but really what does included mean?
Right.
Like, can I show up to work in an afro and I'm not being judged by the way that I look and I'm still being included? And I'm going to tie the equity in there as well. So people want to be able to show up to work as their true whole self and to still have an opportunity to be represented by someone. So if you're in an organization and nobody really looks like you,
Right.
I don't really feel like that's a diverse organization, and I don't really feel included because I'm not connecting with anyone. So it's building that connection within that organization, and a lot of times it goes back to the culture of the organization.
Right.
It goes back to the mission and the values of the company. But even to break that down is, how are you recruiting people? And like, how are you making sure you have a diverse population? I have been seeing some states are basically paying people to move to their state,
Right.
to purchase property. And that also has to do with the external environment around you. So if you're paying people to come to this state, they're probably going to get some type of incentive to get a job there as well. And so we have to think about that. What is it that our current environment, our culture in? Your people know where you located at on your podcast?
They do. We're on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. Yeah.
What city we're in?
Yes. They know we're in Columbus.
Okay. For example,
Columbus, Georgia. Is where we're from, Jasmine.
we are from Columbus. So, for example, Columbus, we know that this is a retirement community for military.
It is.
And so we've got to think about, and I look at our school systems, like, and how are they preparing? I'm going to try not to go there because that's one of my
Oh,
But
Lord.
we think about our school systems. How are we preparing our kids to go out into the workforce? And so you just really have to consider all of those things, or the company has to consider all of those things around you to make sure you're attracting the best talent that you have. You have your universities here in the area. You have small towns outside of Columbus. So you want to think about the people that you are attracting to the company. But as you're doing that, like, what is the company offering the people?
Right. Listen, companies, what are you offering your people? Not so much what you can take from the people. You have to know, like, what are you offering? Because you can get a whole lot if you're offering or taking your employees into consideration.
And so that's that retaining. And that's really what it comes down to. What is it that you offer? Okay, I'm getting an hourly salary. I have my benefits, but as an employer, you got to give me those benefits. So what else are you offering me? Like, what are you doing to burden some of those social responsibilities in my life, whether it has to do with childcare, it may have something to do with fitness, whatever it is in your community. And so, businesses got to really understand the environment in the community that they're operating in and what the community needs are. And it takes a little bit of research to figure that out. But also when you do surveys within your company, and that's something that I do a survey to see really what it is. What are some of those social factors that people are really dealing with? Coming out of the pandemic, there's depression. There's just so much mental. We're focusing on mental health right now. And so I see a lot of companies are offering different things where it comes to meditation. You may get a couple of sessions to speak with a therapist. But those are some of the things that people need to make their life less burdensome, in addition to giving you 8 to 12 hours of their day, 5 days a week. Because for me, coming back from this work-life balance, Farisha, don't talk about me. I'm not. But what I did was I basically calculated the hours of how much I spend at work, whatever, how much time I had for myself. And I only had like 2 hours for myself at the end of the day.
Lord of mercy.
I get up, I have my 30 minutes of whatever time I need. For me, I getting ready for work. Then I have a commute to work. That's almost an hour right where you are. Yes, that's an hour. Then I'm at work for 8 to 10 hours. Then I have another hour to drive home. Then I've got to come home and just do what I need to do for my household. it's time to go to bed and do it all over again.
Yeah.
So you really think about, it really puts things into perspective. Like you as the employee, as the individual, you have to figure out what's important to you. What is it that you need, and align yourself with a company that does that. And you can do that by looking at the stock market prices of that company. If the company is performing well, that's a good indicator. If it's not performing so well, and just look at the stock price, you see that little red line going down or that green line going up. Good, bad. So, look at those things. Look on the website to see what it looks like. The thing that I'm really funny about, go to the leadership section and see what their CEO, what does that executive suite is.
It's always so disappointing here.
If it doesn't look anything like you or anything that you can relate to, you might want to think about diversity at that particular workplace, because it may or may not be existing. You can also go to the professional sites and look up people who work there and see what the mix of people look like. Is this something like this look like a company you would want to be a part of? You're not going to get all the ins and outs. There are a couple of websites that give you feedback, like other employees will leave feedback, typically disgruntled people, but you can at least,
I've left a couple myself.
yeah, I remember I got a call a couple of months ago from I don't even remember what company it was, and she was like, yeah, the head of HR is new and we'll see how long he lasts, but you want me to come and you don't, no, that doesn't sound right. But I went and looked up a lot of the comments that people left, and hearing the information that the recruiter told me and reading the comments, I was like, I could see why he wouldn't be there long. And I could see and understand why the people were feeling the way they felt. And for me, I knew that wasn't the best situation for me for what my career goals.
Right.
So it really comes down to individuals deciding what are your career goals and where do you need to be to get in alignment. And it could be just gaining experience somewhere, or it could, whatever it is that you need, you just really have to be able to manage your own career and be able to set goals for yourself, and don't depend on a manager or somebody to just say, oh, I'm going to promote you because you coming to work and doing what you're supposed to do every day. Like, it just doesn't work like that.
It doesn't. It doesn't at all.
I used to think that, like, but I'm coming here, you getting all my good little time that I'm coming to work and you ain't promoted me yet. But I would say I was being passive about my career, but you've gotta take the initiative and know exactly what you want. Did I answer you?
You did. And the thing is, I was, to piggyback on what you were saying, I learned what was important. Like I was saying earlier, and you gotta hear my stomach growling because I haven't eaten a hungry. Okay, let me start. But anyways, but to your point about like what's important, I learned what's important in my family or work-life balance, like how really important that is. Because I remember, like I was saying earlier, I remember not going to kids' events or not, doing things, having someone there to represent for the village, but me not being able to do that and sacrificing a lot of my family time for a company that I was working with, just for when the pandemic came and you had to close or, take away positions. My position was the one of them. And so I remember having that loss and thinking at the end of the day, all I got is my kids. That's my family. And so every job that I've had trying to build back up to what I was doing and making at the time that my job was eliminated, has led to, how do you feel about my family being that important to me? How do you feel about, like, I will give you 1,000%, but how do you feel about if the school calls me and say I need to go get my children, that you ain't gonna have no issue with me going to go get my kids? And everybody's thoughts about that are different. Some people don't really feel that need, but for me, that's important. My kids knowing that their mother is there for them at any given moment about any little thing. Now, there is a difference because they're children. They will call me about stomach aches, and I can kind of decipher if this is something that, they just want to come home or this is a real thing. But I think that everyone's idea of inclusion or equity is different, because for me, I would want that liberty because when I'm there, I'm there. But when my kids need me, I want to be able to tend to them. Is that still kind of in the same thing of what you were talking about?
It's flexibility.
Right.
Flexibility. And so that's really important. I do see a lot of employers will put job
But
flexibility
it ain't the same.
or like flex PTO, like they're not making you clock PTO anymore. They don't give you a set number of hours. You just kind of PTO as you choose. I see that a lot in the tech space. But with that, it's important. Like if your family is important, you have kids and there's certain things, just be transparent with your direct manager, whoever that supervisor is, be transparent. And I'm sure they will be accommodating and work with you. It may not be every time, or if there's this, depending on what your work is, you may have like, it's a month in at this time, like it's really not good to take time off because it's going to get me backed up and not impact other groups.
Right.
But depending on what your job is, employers have to be flexible at this point because people are walking out doors left and right, with or without a 2 weeks notice. And so a part of that really is being flexible. Everyone is an adult. We don't need anyone to micromanage us. Allow people the autonomy to do what they need to do for them for their personal self. Because if you give me what I need to make sure I'm okay in my household, I'm gonna give you what you need.
Absolutely.
And so it's just really understanding that balance. But we're working in a workspace of multi-generation, and so you have your baby boomers. They grew up in a different time.
They work hard.
Resources and Gen X, they, were exposed to certain things coming up. And then you had the millennials, and then the generations after that, we kind of grew up in a technology space or were adaptive with technology. So it's really a lot about mindsets.
Right.
And a lot of times it's not always the employer, it's the manager. It's a lot of times people will stay or leave because of a manager.
Most of the time. I was going to ask you, that was the question. So do you think, so we were talking about what they call in their worlds DEI. They abbreviate DEI. So I've been learning as I've been preparing. So for us who may not know the difference in DEI and HR, or is there a difference?
So HR is the strategic partner that helps a business. And that goes, whatever that company's goals are, HR helps the company execute and make sure they are compliant and doing what they need to do from a legal standpoint. Though I think the way I broke it down was, so in HR, you have training and development, you have rewards and compensation, you have recruiting. DEI is just a subset of that. A lot of companies, I've seen where they operate in silos. So you have a diversity and inclusion group, but they don't really talk to HR, and it's totally separate. But they're like sisters. It's like the parent.
Right.
HR is the overarching body, and DEI should funnel under that because HR has all the data. Employee information can't be shared with everybody and throughout the company. And so HR houses that data within the system. But DEI is a part of that because when you talk about employment, what employees' rights are, those things still have to funnel through HR because they need a policy in place to support those things. So it's not separate. If it is separate, most likely there are some silos and there may not be the full support of HR to do that, because without HR support, it makes it really hard to create a diverse environment, which goes back to the culture that funnels under HR.
Right.
So it's not separate. God, it funnels under the same umbrella.
Okay, so they're like the mama of
HR is the mom
and children is DEI. Do you see like an increase, or maybe you may see a decrease in companies valuing the opinions or the information that's gathered from DEI?
So what reports are showing is, and we actually spoke on this on the panel that I was on last week, the statistics are going down in DEI. I'm sure a lot of you probably saw a lot of tech companies let people go. And a lot of that was their diverse population of the employee, of the workforce. Some companies, in my personal opinion, outside of the facts, I think some companies did it just to jump on the bandwagon to say, oh, in support of Trayvon Martin and George Floyd and the police brutality we're gonna donate X number of dollars to these Black organizations or to these Black universities.
Mm-hmm.
And not all companies have fulfilled that commitment or that obligation, and I was reading an article where a lot of companies have just pulled back, period. Like, we're not doing that.
Wow.
But there are some companies that really are doing well in that space. But again, it all boils down back to the strategic plan. What are the goals of the company? Mm-hmm. And it has to be in alignment. And so if there is no true strategic planning in that, and when I say strategic planning, I mean coming up with a plan or a solution and the steps that you need. Like, we all should be technically strategically planning out.
Right.
But
she's going to help me with that. She's going to help me.
But coming up with a plan to roll it out and then to measure what you're doing. Like, what are the data points what can we measure on to see if this is really working? And do an assessment and come back over just like we do with our lives.
Right.
Let me see how this is working.
Right.
If it's not, I might need to change course a little bit or do something different. But it just goes back to failure to plan.
Right.
Failure to plan. So if companies and the leaders that are over these specific departments, if they tie into what the mission and the vision and the values and what the strategic goals are for the company,
mm-hmm.
they're going to do well, because again, it all ties back to the bottom line. So you can't just have this random little goal over here that doesn't connect to anything. You're not going to see the value.
Right. There's a company in Columbus, and I'm not going to say the name because I don't think I can, but there's a supplemental insurance company that's headquartered in Columbus. And I don't know if you may agree or not, because I used to work there years and years ago, but it is very hard to find a disgruntled person from that company. Have you ever encountered someone from that company that is like legit disgruntled? If you have, it's like a uniform, because or unless you want to.
I was looking for one.
Well, let me tell you, with my uneducated DEI experience, at the time that I'll just say this, at the time that I was there, which was like from 2007 to 2009, it was hard to kind of sense or see people who were disgruntled. Like, they had situations because management wasn't all that great. Management wasn't all that great in all aspects. But I think what I'm kind of speaking to is the CEO of that company. His values were family. His values were take care of the employee. His values were all about us as a people, as a person. And so I think, because I do have some experiences with management, but I'm the kind of person like, look, it's true. Whatever. I deal with it. We can go on by our business. But the CEO of that company, some of those managers did not reflect who he was or who he is, because he literally thought employees to be important. And I remember him coming to talk to us one time in a cafeteria, which is odd. The CEO come and talk to us during our lunchtime, just random. But he basically said, we take care of you guys, because if we take care of you guys will do well for us. And so I think that in most companies, they have to start doing that as a blueprint. Mm-hmm. Just find out what's going on with your employees. And then also CEOs, if you have people underneath you, make sure that your management lines up with what your motives are, what you are envisioning the company to be. Because it's great to have a great CEO, but if your lower level, senior level, mid-level managers aren't exemplifying what your standards are, then you still have a disgruntled ex-employee, not because the CEO, because the CEO is great in my opinion, but the manager or the lower level management underneath him wasn't pushing his vision. That's why it's important, if you are hiring people, that you hire people that share your visions. Also important that when you're interviewing for these roles, that you are being honest about your vision and what you feel. Like, I'm one of those ones, you interview me, I'm going to tell you. I know it's not the right thing to do, is to talk about your family life. I don't necessarily go into my children, but I want people to know that that's important to me. My family is important to me. Now, I do have a village. We all get together and do what we need to do, but you also need to know if something were to happen with my family, if something emergency situation come up, I'm gonna go tend to my family, and I want you to know that up front. I want you to bring me in, and then if I say my daughter who suffers from fever seizures. If I tell you today I'm not gonna be able to come in because she has a fever, I need you to be okay with that, because I don't want something to be that I have had happen back in 20, I think it was 2020, or was she born 2016? So it's 2018, 2017, where she was on life support for 3.5 days because of her fever seizure. So for me, her having a fever is a problem. I need you to be understanding of that. So I think that my point into that was just saying, realizing that our CEOs, once you have something that works for your employees, make sure that you push that vision to all the levels coming down up underneath you, right?
Yep. So what I will say, if during your interview, if they're asking those type of personal questions, that is a whole no, ma'am.
They do though.
They are not supposed to ask.
I had someone interview me, and it didn't bother me, but I realized that they're not supposed to.
Yeah.
But I did have someone ask me about my children, like outright ask me about my children, and I was like taken back by it, but
Yeah, they shouldn't be asking anything about your personal life, your kids. If you choose to disclose that
opens the floodgate.
Yeah, it does. When you put the information out there, that's different from them asking. But also, again, it's that being transparent, because when you're interviewing, they want to know that you're competent and capable of doing the job. That's ultimately what the interview is for. But I mean, we are all human beings. And we all have things going on, whether it's us, ourselves personally, or our family, kids. And so people just have to be mindful of that. I think people forget that we all are humans and we all have red blood that runs through our veins. And so no one is exempt from anything happening in the world.
Right.
But if the CEO has that energy and that vision, there is some misalignment within that company, that HR is not being a true strategic partner and helping the CEO disseminate and communicate that information to the managers. It also shows that there is a lack of training, where managers they need some help with the way they're doing things, but also different organizations have different structures. And so however they communicate information, and really transparency and communication is a really big thing. I know with a previous employer, we would have town halls, or with our division lead, we would have like a quarterly, monthly call. And I really appreciated that, because we knew exactly where the organization stood, what he wanted from us or what was expected, what were some areas we needed to work on. And a lot of times managers just don't communicate things.
Right.
And what I've learned is somebody can say something and you may hear it completely different, and then you've recommunicated that message. So it's important to have a corporate communications team where, they're working with HR and whoever is setting the goals, that they clearly communicate that message out. You have to communicate the change that's taking place and consider your employees.
Right.
You have to consider people and let people know what's going on.
Right.
So if the lower level, and I don't like to say lower level employees, but individual contributors.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, individual contributors. If they're not aware of what's taking place, of course, you're not going to get all the details of the executive conversation, but it's your manager's responsibility to come back and communicate that to you guys. And that's where breakdown is. I don't know what they thinking.
To me, sometimes it feels like that they just want to. Sometimes they feel like they want to have that information that nobody else has, which I think is very childlike.
Reach the goal.
But I don't understand the logic behind which is why it's done that way, because I am an over communicator. I'm the type of person, like when I'm the admissions director where I work, And I'm the type of person, I will send that same 2 sentences to you in a text, in an email, on a Microsoft Teams. If I see you, I'm going to get the information to you because I want it to be clear and it's to all parties. Everybody's involved. Hey, did you get my text? I want to make sure you got my email. Did you get my little Microsoft Teams message? Because I want it to be clear. I don't know what the gain that they're thinking they're getting by withholding information because it's not for the betterment of anybody but themselves. It's just kind of like hanging something over their head. Like, I know something that you don't. I don't know. Is that a legit thing? That's childish. But you'd be surprised in the corporate world, the level of petty that still exists.
But you know what that really boils down to? And it's who they are on the inside. That's really deal. That's really what it is. And I have to be mindful of that when I'm communicating with people. It's like, oh, it's you on the inside. It's you.
She's so sweet. It's you, baby. That's what it is.
But you know, a lot of people in corporate America, people are out for themselves. Mm-hmm. It's a self-serving environment, and everybody's trying to get to the top.
Right.
And a lot of times people will do what they have to do, not share information, throw you under the bus. I used to always say, oh, before you try to throw me under the bus, I'm going to throw myself under the bus.
Yeah,
this
I'm
is
going to tell the story.
Yeah, I'm going to get to it before you because you
got no power.
You got no power, but you're going to tell a different version to make me look bad and make you look good. So let me go ahead and put out what it is.
Right.
And then you come back and challenge the truth.
Right.
So, but a lot of times it goes back to leadership training, management training. A lot of times people get into management roles and they've never managed before. Mm-hmm. And so that is a huge gap from managing a process, a project, to now managing people because you've got your work to do. You've got to manage these people, make sure you provide proper instructions and give them feedback and what you're supposed to do. And a lot of companies just don't prepare, have a succession plan in place to work and prepare the next person to be promoted or to be elevated. Or even if you have a high-performing employee, start recommending that they take different training on leadership or whatever areas that you see they need improvement on, because y'all should be having monthly conversations every month. Not at the end of the year. It's a surprise.
Y'all getting the class.
Oh, problem.
And it's just sad that y'all should be having monthly conversations, not during the evaluation. That's why people get upset. You know, my dad was talking about earlier. That's why people get upset during evaluation because nothing is said. Now, there's some behaviors you just know that you know you're not supposed to be late every day. Now you know that. Now if you can help it, you and your boss got it worked out. I have a sister-in-law. Her boss knows it. He don't fight it. He just knows it. He also knows that she works hard, and so there's no fight. But you know, if he were to show up after all these years of it being done, and then all of a sudden on the evaluation say, "Well, you show up late to work," and because of that, now you are at a 1 for an evaluation, which affects your increase or promotion or increase in your salary. Yeah, that's what made people mad because you haven't done anything. You just kind of let it slide. And so I'm thinking I'm sliding. I'm thinking we got an understanding, but yeah.
My previous manager, she is very good for that. Like, I'm not going to tell you at the end of the month. I'm not going to tell you at the end of the quarter. Something happened. We're going to have a quick call, a quick meeting, and we're going to talk about it and work through it and figure out how we can help it. And I appreciate and value that so much because that's really effective management and communication.
Right.
If it's a problem or I'm doing something wrong and you never mention it to me, it's just like being in a relationship and your spouse done did something to hurt your nerve and you just like, right. The whole you just be quiet the whole time, and then one day you just snap for no reason,
right?
And they look, what's going on? Oh,
right?
Because you had did something like 3 months ago and it hurt my feelings, and I didn't tell you. But of course, you're not communicating like that. But it's just you have to do that in the workplace too. And like you said earlier, everybody learns differently. Everybody has a different need. People like to be rewarded differently. Mm-hmm. And so managers, you know, that's a part of that being inclusive. You got to take the time to get to know your people.
Got to know your people.
Some people like to be rewarded with praise. You could just say, hey, good job and keep going. Somebody else, they might like treats on Friday. They want some donuts and a smoothie or something.
I'm one of those. I want them.
And then to figure out what it is that keeps your people motivated. And that's a really huge thing in leadership and management, knowing what motivates your people. And unfortunately, you guys spend time together, like even outside of work, planning a team building event so that your team gets to know each other and you guys understand how to communicate, because there are different types of people that communicate. What I loved at my previous job, we would do we would do DISC assessments. We would do, I can't think of the other one, but we would do these assessments to figure out our personality types. Right. We communicate. So if I have a dominant personality and I'm really just like a worker, like I don't really like to talk a lot, I'm not going to press you, but I'm going to get this work done. You just have to learn how to communicate with those people, and they give you recommendations on how to navigate and deal with those personalities. And that's something that a lot of, especially if you have some low morale in your team, that's something that management should look into. And if management can't do it, manager, talk to your HR business partner. Your business partner, your HR business partner is there to help you navigate and schedule and identify what type of training is needed for your team and what you can do.
More than just trying to figure out a way to write them up. Talk with your business HR strategic partner for more than how can I document this appropriately so I can get them out the door? Because you know what I'm saying? like we have to be able to communicate. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I found a statistic that I do want to say. It says employees with a greater sense, this is from the Harvard Business Review, employees with a greater sense of belonging and inclusion at work report 167% higher ENPS scores. And that ENPS score is the employee net promoter score, which is the likelihood that a current employee would recommend your company as a great place to work. 167%. Like, that's almost double what people would do, and you would actually get more of those same great kind of people had you just paid attention to them and what they like and catering to them. And I know sometimes I don't know, I think people think that Americans are like spoiled, in other countries, which we kind of are, but but at the end of the day, you get so much out of a person. I could think about just me as a mother. I get more out of my children when I reward them or are kind to them and take time. Like my daughter, she's a lovey-dovey type person. She's the opposite of me. I love my children, but my daughter's like very lovey, oh, money and lovey so. And, I had boys prior to her, so I'm like a little sometimes around the edges with her. But I learned just by learning from her that, I get so much out of her at school. I get so much out of her in her dance classes and things like that, just by getting to know my daughter and not trying to treat her like the boys, because she's not. She's all girl. She likes nails and shoes, and she does little test runs in her heels when she gets some. Little test runs, she got to run in them and stomp and make sure she can get around like she needs to. But that to me is what employees or employers should be doing for employees. Or do you not? Do you agree?
What I will say is they definitely need to listen. Listen, because people will tell you what you want to hear. I know doing post surveys or engagement surveys, that is a really good tool that a lot of companies may not utilize, especially if there's a lot of change happening. New CEO, new executives, so you know how they do the huge layoffs and then they bring a whole new group of people in. It's a really good time to test your audience and see, how are they feeling with all of these changes? What is it that we can do, employer HR, to get them more engaged, to give us what we need, help us meet that bottom line. So utilizing surveys at different points of the life cycle is very important. When I say life cycle, just from once the employee comes on to the time of their relationship, things are happening throughout the organization. It's very important to do a temperature check and see where people are, to see what you've implemented. Is that working? I ain't gonna say employers should cater to the work,
not cater,
but be open to the feedback and be open to change, because the workforce is moving in a different way.
It is.
It's not in the office every day.
It's not
5-6 days a week. working 12 hours. Like, it's not, people need flexibility. People need to be able to do things. People need to work from home, come to the office a couple of days, maybe, depending on what the work is.
Right.
But employers just have to be open to the feedback and open to the change.
It's a compromise between both. That's kind of what we opened up with. It's a compromise between the two. The employers need employees and employees need employers. And so just like in any relationship, you guys have to meet in the middle. You have to communicate. These are my needs as employee. These are my needs as employer. And then, with the employer, you have a wider group of people. You can kind of bottom line it and kind of get the common situations or common thoughts together and create or devise a plan. And this is where you would be helpful with your business and your company. I have one more statistic I want to get your opinion on. And I hope you guys are really, really listening to what she's saying, because she's really talking about our points as the employees, like what we should be looking for in a company. But then also, if you have a person that you know is a CEO of a company or a business, this would be great for you to send to them as well, so they can kind of keep up with the times. Because, just like resume building is different than what it used to be. Interviewing is different than what it used to be. Everything is different. And so you have to grow. Like, I remember back in the day when you did interviews, you had to wear pantyhose. Like stockings.
It's going to be a no.
Stockings for interviews. And then you had to, call and go there. And like a lot of that is like tech now. Like, you don't have to necessarily do a whole lot of that. I mean, I had a lady following up with me on a job one time via text. It was like, are you still interested? And I'm, I've been in corporate since I was 18. So it was like, oh, that's what we do. Like, you don't know if this is a scam or what? Because nowadays people are doing things different. So this, I felt like this would be important.
I hope it's been helpful.
It has been. I have been educated, and I want to get her thought about this. And this may just go off into something totally different, but I want to get your last thought. 50% of women report experience microaggressions, and 14% experience harassment in the last year. 93% of women think reporting non-inclusive behaviors will negatively impact their careers, and this is by UPL. Yeah, thoughts, because we have to talk about the beautiful Black, brown women, and so we are in corporate world, and I would feel like it's an injustice to not speak to that. And now, if you get offended, this is just the difference in my podcast, Free to Speak, and other folk podcasts. I'm going to speak freely, and Aisha's going to speak freely too with me. It's one of those things that we just know it's a part of our work life. I think we were talking about earlier, inclusion with being true to who you are. There are some places that me and Aisha, we have naturally curly hair, but as you can see, we're straight-ish. I'm straight-ish today, but there are some places that unique part of us is not. And if we come to an interview or come to a job looking like that, although we have experience, we have the education, and we have the knowledge to back what we're doing and what we're saying, we're not valued because we don't look like that. We don't look like what they feel like. So let's speak to it. Let's talk about this 50% reporting experiencing microaggressions. 93% of women reporting non-inclusive behaviors will negatively impact their careers. Like, I think I was saying too, like, my legal name is Farisha Nicole Young, but in the workforce, I have learned I have to go by Nicole to even be seen or noticed, because Farisha doesn't necessarily has not gotten the job. I've applied for one job with 2 different resumes. One with Farisha and my last name at the time, and one with Nicole and my last name at the time. And applied, you hear me? And was denied. The same resume was denied as Farisha, but was accepted and got the job and worked there for a good little minute as Nicole. So from that moment forth, I've always applied as Nicole, because Farisha, with the same expertise, I got the email saying, that you're not qualified. Okay, so I'm gonna apply as Nicole, and let's see. Now I'm overqualified, or now that I'm able to get the job, and thank you, Lord, for allowing you to be here. So yes, inclusive, 93%.
Yeah, and it goes back to diversity also. People are just biased, period. Whether we do it consciously or subconsciously, everybody has some bit of biasness in us. But it takes being self-aware, knowing yourself, to be intentional, not to be prejudgmental. Unfortunately, with women in the workplace, we can experience some exclusion, especially in a more senior level, and most of your counterparts are white males. You might not always get that invite to the golf course on Friday.
I'm okay with that. Just so
You might not get that invite to a game or something. Like they're just gonna be things, especially if you're the only female within that leadership spectrum. So, we do deal with that, but I have learned, even on the individual contributor end, I document everything.
Absolutely.
So if there's something that is looking a little not right, I'm going to make a note. And when I have my performance review, I can bring it up then. Or if it's something that's a little bit more serious, as the employee, you can go to HR. Most companies should have a hotline, like if you want to report an incident, if you don't feel comfortable. But also, most companies should have harassment training. There's a manager training and there is a non-manager training. So everybody should have that, because sometimes people can say things and they may not just be aware.
Right.
Or it may not have been the intent, but that's how it came out.
Right.
So it becomes educating ourselves, like that's what the employer needs to do. Provide some type of, whether it's harassment, bias training, communication training on microaggression, passive aggressiveness, because those are all things that we really do deal with in the workplace. But that's where the HR, that's where we come into play to make sure that we have those type of trainings to eliminate those type of circumstances, although they happen here and there, but there are things that the company can do to try and mitigate that risk or that exposure from someone being affected by that.
And what we have to do in addition to that is just be responsible adults from the HR side and from the employee side. We have to just be responsible adults. And I have to say this because I don't want to give people something to take and run and use it for the negative. 93% of women thinking that reporting non-inclusive behaviors will negatively impact their careers is because they have experience telling someone in HR something because that person in HR wasn't properly trained. And they got, I have seen the grapevine, and how somebody have reported something because they were supposed to report to this person, but the person that they reported it to wasn't trained properly, and so it still got back down to the person that they were reporting against, and then ended up being a situation where now that person has lost their job because of it. We have to make sure that we have to do a give and take with each other. We have to be able to take care of it, because all of us are not just working because that's what we really want to do. We all had the money to do it.
As Simon Carroll said, I don't dare dream of work.
Right. I would be at home, darling, and eating. My mother and me, Asia, would be scheduling phone calls all week long and sipping hot tea. But the part about it is that we have to work. We have families and ourselves that we have to take care of. And so I just don't understand the idea of not handling situations like that appropriately.
When you're in HR is a very confidential position, almost as if you're in legal. It's a very confidential position, and when things happen and come to you, you have to respond and act accordingly and know what your policies are, knowing what federal and state, local laws are as it relates to employee-employer relationship. Unfortunately, everybody isn't a good person. Everybody isn't honest. And so HR has to do their due diligence. That's where the investigation comes in. So if that's reported, it should be an investigation that take place.
Right.
To see what is really going on and gathering the facts. So as I say, I'm taking a note for everything. So, I have what I need, but there should be a level of confidentiality and there should be due diligence and investigation taking place. And managers have a responsibility of being discreet as well. What someone comes to you with in confident, whether it's a harassment or not, that shouldn't go to your work friend when y'all at lunch and whatever y'all doing. Like that conversation should not end up there. Because what that does is that breaks trust. And then that's how people get disengaged. That's how people become disgruntled because something happened and I shared it with someone who I should be able to trust and who has the authority to help resolve that. And when that trust is broken,
it's hard to gain.
Yeah.
And I'm the type of person too, like if I see, like if me and Aisha had a conversation, Aisha says, I'm going to tell you something that so-and-so told me, but I don't tell nobody. I, at that point, will look at her sideways because if this person is supposed to be your friend or whatever, and they trusted you with this information, even if they're not friends, they just trusted you with this information, and you are now telling me, now I look at you sideways when it comes down to anything that we talk about. And so I guess in all of this, we have to educate ourselves. Do like I did, people. Educate yourselves. Educate yourself about the company that you're interviewing for, and educate yourselves about the company that you're actually that you're with. And then look, and when you see what it is, if you need to make some adjustments, make some adjustments. If there is a suggestion box that you can make suggestions with, do that. Have those conversations with your management. Aisha, as we get ready to close out, is there any bit of advice that you think we need to know as a community of Black and brown people, that we need to know about DEI, our workplace, corporate America? What would that be?
The one thing I will say is, as we're working in an environment of multi-generations, one thing, companies that have been around for a long time, they probably have some deeply rooted cultural habits that are not the most equitable,
right,
or have a diverse perspective. So keep that in mind. But at the end of the day, we all have a responsibility to ourselves, to our employer, who we decide to get in that relationship with. And I call it a relationship because it's going to mutually benefit both of us in some type of way.
Absolutely.
But be accountable for your own career. Don't depend on your manager or your corporation to see the value in you and what you bring. Have a plan for yourself and manage upward if you need to. When I say manage upward, if your manager isn't scheduling meetings with you to have a monthly one-on-one, or if you need feedback with your career, schedule a meeting. Put it on their calendar. Schedule a meeting, take control of the situation. Also, I would say, have a plan of what you want.
Right.
So that you can work towards getting those results.
That's right.
Be mindful of do your research. Do your research. Look up the companies. Check out the stock value, the stock price of those companies. See what they're offering. And at the end of the day, be accountable for yourself and have discernment into whatever it is that you're doing, because we're all humans at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And whoever you are and how you're showing up, that's what you're bringing to the table. So you can't always point the finger at somebody else if you're doing the same thing or you're not showing up as your best self, not for them, but for you.
Right. The good thing to add to that as well is that we have to, have to leave everything back to God in some kind of way. But the important thing is that, like God tells us in the Bible, work unto Caesar like we are unto God. Like our relationship with God is so important to us that while we're at work, we are giving our 110,000%. I sing, I give my 110,000%. When I work, I give my 110,000%. You know, you have to be respectful. Like when it comes down to your leadership, like I may not agree with everything my leader does, but my job as up underneath him is to respect him. I might not be in agreement. I have his ear a little bit so I can kind of talk to him and say little stuff, but I just try to make sure I respect that. So keep that in mind when you're working in your place of work or wherever that may be, if that's the food service, if that's warehousing, if that's, you know, corporate settings, whatever that is. If we all just keep in mind that we are working like in our jobs like we would unto God, that'll keep everybody on the up and up. That'll have our employees working better, and that'll have our employers making sure they're doing what's beneficial for all parties involved. Is that a good way to put it?
That's a good way to put it. I will say, I will challenge you. If there's someone on your team within your group who you work with and you don't really talk to them much, invite them out to lunch. Y'all don't have to go off the premises. It could be in the break room, but invite them to lunch and take the time to get to know them, because people want to feel like they are a part of something, a sense of community.
Right.
And that's how we start to feel like, and it's just that simple act of inviting somebody to lunch, or you want to get coffee and, you know, hey, would you like a cup of coffee? I was like the little,
I do that now. I buy coffee for people all the time, especially if I feel like they're like not having a great day. You need a coffee. Okay. I don't.
And even if it's something that, you know, they like, just pick it up. I remember one day someone told me, "We're like, you like the cruise ship captain. Like, be you just happy? You just talk to everybody." But it's important. I mean, we spend so much of our time at work. Make it worth your time while you're there. I'm not saying play all day, but enjoy the people you work with and have a sense of enjoyment for what you do.
Right.
And it definitely helps.
It does help. Tell the people from Free to Speak where they can find you at if they want to contact you.
Sure. You could find me at essenceofcultureconsulting.com, and I'm on all media sites with that same name, Essence of Culture Consulting, on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and you can go to my website and you can contact me there.
I thank you for being here with me. It's something to see you. We are excited about our cruise that we're going on in a couple of months. So this is just kind of, you know, I'm trying not to get super emotional about it, but this is just kind of one of those things where you're just excited about, like, you can see what God is going to do in the relationship, and it's just so exciting to have a relationship with somebody or connect with someone, and then we're both in the same wavelength about we just gonna let God have his way, and however it turn out is we're just gonna trust him in the meantime. So I thank you guys for listening. I pray that you guys were educated like I was schooled today, honey, and ever since Aisha's been talking to me about this, I get a class and a lesson, but I think it's only to make us all better as a people and as a community. And so please feel free, if you have any questions, you can email me at freetospeakfts@gmail.com. That's FREE, the number 2, SPEAKFTS@gmail.com. You can check me out on Instagram at Free to Speak Podcast, as well as Facebook Free to Speak Podcast. If you want to enjoy some music, you can also scroll over on Facebook at Free Worship. I'm there singing some songs here and there. Also, you can go to Instagram at One and Only Free Worship. I have some more content coming up real soon on that. So I thank you guys for being here. I thank you for meeting my really, really good friend. And if nothing else, I want you guys to be whole, be authentic, and be free to speak. Have a good one. Bye.
Man, I learned in my life to put God over commas, God over drama. Yeah, that's how I became an overcomer. I put